Requesting connection. Established. Encrypted. We're live. The show you've been asking for. Advice, technology, and community. Linux first, all others second. This is Ask Noah.
Live from Altispeed Technologies, the Ask Noah show starts right now. This is the show where we came to do all the things on Linux they said couldn't be done and take your questions on how to do the same. The phone lines are open this hour. To be a part of the program, it is a free call, 1-855-450-NOAH. That's 1-855-450-6624. Send an email to live@asknoahshow.com. My name is Noah Chalaya. I am your host. Delighted to be here with you as another episode of the Ask Noah show kicks off this hour. Joining me, my co-host, Mr. Steve Ovens. Welcome in, sir.
Good evening, Noah. You know, we're getting some giant fluffy snow today. Are you seeing that?
Yeah, it is, and it's getting all cold. And here's the worst part. Like, people from other warmer parts of the world won't understand this, but when you get into the April, March season, there's a battle that rages inside of one's mind. And the battle is the following. When the snow falls, do I get out there and shovel like a normal, rational, responsible adult? Or do I say to myself, meh, it's going to all melt? Because it is all going to melt.
Well, I just kind of close my eyes and hope it goes away, but maybe that's a function of the number of hours I've been working.
Love it. Steve, you want to do some feedback?
Let's do it.
Our first email comes in from Nick. Nick says, hello, Noah and Steve. I just wanted to write in and give you a great thank you. I've been struggling to learn Kubernetes. So imagine the grin I had when I was going for a walk and listening to the latest episode, and I hear near the end of the show and proof somebody writes in about Kubernetes. Then Steve mentions he too has some knowledge on Kubernetes. Jackpot! I've learned so much from the show, and this was another feather in your cap. Thank you so much, Nick. So Steve, if only Nick knows he's about to learn, it's not just some things about Kubernetes. It's not an exaggeration to say there are periods of time where it's all you talk about all day, every day, at all different levels, with all different kinds of people.
That is a true statement. It is a daily thing that I am engaging with someone about Kubernetes in some fashion.
So one of the things that we were talking about a little bit that I think will be very appealing, but we want to get your thoughts, because at the end of the day, like I said a few weeks ago, you guys kind of drive the show. We show up and we do the content, we ask the questions, and certainly if you don't have anything to talk about, we do. But if you want to hear more about Kubernetes, can you help us understand what that looks like? Is it, I want an introductory level to Kubernetes, to the extent that you can do that and understand we have somewhat of a challenge trying to do that in audio only format. And so we would have to think very carefully about how we construct and how we deliver that material. But if that's something you'd like Steve to dig into, help us understand what that looks like. Is it, I want an introduction course? Is it, I want to know everything about it? Steve, you deal with kind of two camps of, there's more, but two general camps of people that they just want to push a button and it works, and then the troubleshooters. Can you talk a little bit about what those two classes of people are so we can kind of get a gauge of where our audience is at?
Yeah, so I guess generally speaking, I end up dealing with people who are either, hey, I don't really care about the underlying platform. I want to run my application, and I know how to make my application work in a container, so help me transfer that knowledge so that this container orchestration thing in the corner does stuff and I have my application show up. Then the other group of people are the guy who's read the manual, and not just the manual, but the footnotes in the manual, and comes up with a very ingenious, complex set of problems that he then runs into a problem with, and I have to help him debug. And they're kind of on the opposite end of the spectrum from the perspective of, doing an installation and setting up the service.
So you are comfortable in either of those environments or either of those scenarios. Where would you say hey, this is what I like talking about, or this is how, if you're interested, here's how deep Steve would go?
Well, I mean, I'm able to speak at, let's say, a high functioning level. I don't write the software. I can't go in, well, not can't. I won't go in and Splunk the code most of the time to figure out what a thing is doing. I have colleagues that do that. So if you're talking about down at the byte level, that's probably a little bit out of my depth. But if you want to talk about like how it's architected, or, how do I move from, let's say, beginner skill to high functioning, medium, or advanced skills, I'm definitely well skilled all up and down that side of the stack. So it depends on how deep you want to go. I'll give it a shot. And if I don't know, I'll tell you I don't know.
Absolutely. So write in live at AskNoahShow.com. Let us know where you think Steve should start and how deep you want to go. What are you looking for? Examples are really helpful. So if you can say, here's something I would be interested in learning, or here's where I've struggled with Kubernetes, or here's what the most useful thing, we would love to produce that kind of content for you. But it's suffice to say, Steve, it would be significantly more work than a typical episode. And that's not to say that we wouldn't do it or not interested or anything like that. It's just to say that if we're going to do it, we want to make sure that we're skating to what serves people best. And so we need maybe a little help understanding what that is. And then so far as we understand that, it sounds like you would love to do something like that.
Yeah, I mean, it just takes a little bit of forethought so that I don't kind of ramble along, right? That's ultimately what we're looking for, is just a little bit of prep time so that I can think about, if we're going to discuss a topic, how do I lay down the basics of the topic beforehand and stuff like that.
Let us know, live at AskNoahShow.com. Obviously, you can call 855-450-NOAH, 855-450-6624. Let us know that way as well. Email's probably best. Our second email comes in from Craig. And Craig says, hey, Noah and Steve, I just wanted to provide an update on my GrapheneOS journey. Finally went to eBay a few months back and I purchased a Google Pixel 7. I installed GrapheneOS and I was very impressed with how easy it was to do with their web installer. I tried to quote unquote secure it more by making various profiles. There are so many different options and recommendations. I don't believe I have a large threat vector, so I didn't go too far down the rabbit hole. The only issue I had was I couldn't get Android Auto to connect, which wasn't the end of the world. I then decided to try CalyxOS/EOS, Lineage, and Iode. All of these, EOS would be the next one I would choose over Graphene. I switched back to Graphene with one profile set up for now and was able to get Android Auto to work this time. It was a good learning experience trying the different ROMs and reloading back to stack on Android between them. Bottom line, figure out what you want, do your research, and don't be afraid to experiment. Thanks for the advice and the encouragement to give open source a try. Further testing ahead, and hope to not only to Google myself, but bye-bye Apple as well. Thanks again, Craig. So Steve, this could not be a better week to get this piece of feedback. I'm extremely happy for Craig, but I also took the next step in my GrapheneOS journey. So you might remember when I bought my Galaxy S10, I did so predicated primarily on one factor, and that one factor was it was listed on LineageOS as a device that I could install alternative ROMs to. So back in 2021 when I bought it, I had not yet played with GrapheneOS, and my plan was to install LineageOS. A friend of mine loaned me a Nexus 6, and I had used Lineage, and I fell in love with it and thought this is absolutely the road I'm going. So I ordered myself a Galaxy S10. It arrives, I'm very happy with the phone from a functional standpoint, and I used it until I stopped getting updates. And then I went to install LineageOS, and what I learned has frustrated me to the point that I will never, ever, ever own a Samsung phone again. I learned that while there is a model of the S10 that was sold all over the world that allows you to unlock the bootloader and install whatever you want to include LineageOS, carriers in the United States petitioned Samsung to make a special version of the phone that doesn't allow you to unlock the bootloader. And so I am stuck with the stock Android OS, which I tolerated up until my phone provider started installing apps I didn't want, didn't ask for, and didn't consent to on my phone. I'd wake up the next morning and all of these apps that I didn't want, didn't ask for, and didn't consent to appear on my phone. I would tap into the app, click on the information tab, and it would say installed by Mobile Services Manager. So I call my phone company and said, what are you doing? And the answer I got back is, oh, sir, we push those apps out to the phone. We have complete control over the phone, can flash anything and all the things. Awesome. This is my exit ramp right here. This is my exit ramp. I confirmed what they were telling me by removing my AT&T SIM and inserting a T-Mobile SIM. Indeed, the first thing that happened was the phone restarted and it completely changed the way the phone was working. Instead of having a bajillion apps, T-Mobile installs one app, that is the T-Mobile app, and then it asks you for these different suggested things and it changes the boot up screen and all the rest of it. But the point there is the carrier on boot up of a new SIM loads an operating system on your phone. I don't know about you, Steve. That's on it. It was a bridge too far. And so I said, nuts to this, I'm out. I had already purchased a Pixel 6 to use as my personal phone. So I typically have two phones, one that I use for work and one that I have for personal. So 6 o'clock at night, work phone goes off, personal phone comes on, stays throughout the night, stays throughout the weekend. 8 a.m., work phone comes back on, personal phone goes back in my backpack, that kind of thing. Worked really well for me. So I'd been using the Pixel 6 and I've been really happy with GrapheneOS, but I'm using it for a handful of apps, a handful of hours, and on the weekends. And so I anticipated that this was going to be kind of a struggle. This mobile app business, installing apps I didn't want, didn't consent to, and didn't ask for on my phone was the bridge too far. So this week I made the plunge and I purchased a new to me Pixel 8a. Did so for a couple of reasons. One is I have small hands, and so the Pixel 8a fits my hand better because it's a 6.1 inch screen, which perfectly matches my my S10. And I then loaded GrapheneOS on it. The Pixel 8a became my new personal phone, and the 6 has now become my work phone. And I have to tell you, I am now 48 hours in. So Friday night at 6 o'clock, my Galaxy S10 shut down for the last time. And on Sunday this week, the Pixel 6 booted up with GrapheneOS. Everything has been flawless. One of the things that I did is I installed all of my banking apps just to see if they would work. They do. I'm going to take them off for other reasons. But before I get into that, I wanted to touch base with you and ask if you're still in the boat of financial apps don't touch your phone for any reason. And if you're willing to share, why is that?
Because I'm an old fuddy-duddy. End of segment. No. Well, I suppose that's part of it. I guess instinctively I push back against the whole the phone will be your entire life bit. But more pointedly, when I think about the various levels of harm that would come from putting financial stuff on your phone, as opposed to the actual benefit, I can't justify the two. So on the one hand, if we're being fair, the financial institutions give you some level of guarantee that they will protect the application, and if there's some error in the code, they will make it right, right? As part of their, at least here in North America, there's a pretty stringent guideline set out by the federal government in terms of dealing with financial data. And so they have a certain bar that they have to stand to. And so they say that their application meets all this stuff, and somebody audits it. Like, I'm not being cynical. I'm just thinking through the process, right? So on the plus side, if you got it on the phone, you got regulation that forces the banks to hold to a certain standard. Having been part of those audits, I can tell you that the auditors are only looking at checkboxes and not necessarily functionality. And so, yes, it will pass that. I guarantee they have passed whatever regulations they need to pass. That doesn't mean that you're getting the best quality end product. Some places really go the extra mile to make sure that they really care about that stuff and all that sort of stuff. And other places, it's a work in progress. So when I consider that, the plus side is anywhere I go, I can pull out my phone and do banking I guess I want to do that. Maybe. Why do I want to do that? I'm not exactly sure. But the plus here is I can do it wherever I'm at.
Okay, so
provided I have internet.
Let me throw something at you, because I'm going to ask you to kind of walk me through this. I feel like I've made up my mind, but I'm not 100% sure. So the rationale goes like this. I, as a form of spending control, do not leave a bunch of money in my checking account. I leave it inside of my savings account. And that the federal limit of whatever it is, 10 transactions a month or whatever, forces me to pay very close attention if I'm going to take money that I didn't ordinarily plan to spend. I can do that 10 times a month. And then I have a problem, a federally imposed problem. And so it causes me to be very cautious about when I do that. The downside to that approach is if I wound up at a fairly impromptu dinner last Friday at a very nice restaurant that I hadn't previously budgeted for. And so that's right there is a situation where I need to go into my bank and move money from my savings account over to my checking account. And that kind of thing seems like it's really beneficial to be able to do on the phone. The problem that I have with it is there are certain things, and for me, it's not banking, it's other things, but I think the principle will apply here equally. There are some things that I cannot afford for them to get leaked onto the internet. I cannot afford for somebody to perform an attack. And so I need to learn more about the inherent insecurities that exist with mobile phones. And so from that perspective, can you continue to address why you either would or wouldn't do banking? But that's my argument for why it would be convenient, is that there are times that you're able to shift this stuff over. You need to be able to look at that stuff or make transactions.
So we'll start with anything that runs code can be exploited. There's nothing more or less secure about code running on a phone as opposed to somewhere else. So I want to be clear about that. However, when you are working on a phone, so a phone is not a purpose device anymore. It's not just a phone. It is a do everything device. And I am given to understand that most people have a sizable number of apps on their phone. I'm told that with my 20 or so applications that I have on my phone, outside of the ones that get installed by the system, that is small. That's a small number of apps, and most people are in the hundreds or maybe a couple hundred.
Mm-hmm.
All that to say is that's a lot of moving code. And so in the past year and a half, we've seen code execution via a rogue pixel. We've seen code execution / rooting of a phone via a misplayed audio file, a misplaced movie, just a movie file, which is just a different type of media file.
Mm-hmm.
We've seen all kinds of exploits happening across the board on both iOS and Android for their various operating systems because they're highly under attack, right? So you've got this broad attack surface on top of the fact that you are also loading all kinds of different software on your phone because it is the multi-purpose entertainment device. On top of that, you've decided to move yourself from a relatively niche target running desktop Linux somewhere, and probably, well, knowing you tend to have a very small subset of applications that you are running on your desktop Linux to begin with, especially when you're running Tails. So you've gone from a niche of a niche to one of two operating systems that is active in the world of phones.
Ooh. And the most popular targets for anybody that wants to extract data, right? You can count on people having a phone.
Exactly. And so aside from that, so those are kind of existential threats. Like someone out there somewhere might boogeyman me and steal my stuff. There's also hey, I have my phone on with me most of the time. If you're not Steve Ovens, you have your phone on you most of the time. It can go walking. That's a pretty big deal to me. Having password manager or phone or financial information on my phone and it goes walking, that's cause for heartburn. Despite the fact that, yes, they still have to get into your phone and there are protections on that and so on and so forth. ADB is a thing. Like, people who are really smart can do these things as a general rule. And so it seems to me that it would be kind of equivalent to taking all of your money out of your wallet, out of your bank, and shoving it in your wallet and just walking around with all of the money you own in your wallet. I understand that the financial apps are secured and all the rest of that, but conceptually, that's essentially what you're doing. Someone jacks your phone and then finds a way in, and you've got your password manager on there. Woof. I mean, I guarantee you've got your email. Well, most people have email on their phone. I do. Although I use every method. Like, you have to get into my Proton Mail, it's a different PIN and my biometrics. But still, the point is, like, my Proton Mail app is on there. And if you've got your two-factor, which is likely because where else are you going to run your two-factor, and you've got your password manager, and you've got your banking, like,
yeah,
I don't know.
Here's the thing. You didn't make me feel any better. Can you dig into some of these for me? So what do you mean by a rogue pixel?
So you can, there are specially crafted pixels that can do all kinds of things. So for example, one of the things we know is like a clear pixel can be used as a tracking device in an email, which is why they say don't ever open emails you don't know, because you never know what's going to happen there. So,
oh, I see. You're not talking about a pixel phone. You actually mean a picture element.
Yes, a pixel, like a small, tiny thing that you will not see. A pixel, as in the graphical unit, is just can absolutely pwn your phone.
Wow. And so obviously then, you know, the other examples of rogue audio file, rogue video files, those I think are maybe more understood, or maybe not, they're more common, I guess. You know, we've heard of that, right? And you're targeting a large so okay, I tell you what, you've largely convinced me. So if I really care about it, the phone is useful for connecting me to the internet and as a communication device. If I can't afford for it to be gone, or I can't afford to lose it, then just you would say don't put it on the phone. And you know what's interesting? Really, Steve, with the GPD Pocket, I can pull a full functioning laptop running desktop Linux with Lux, and I can probably get into it about as fast as I could start a phone up. The only thing is maybe missing, you know, fingerprint or that sort of thing. But you wouldn't trust that anyway. And on a cold boot, you'd have to enter in a password. So I think you've convinced me. I will, even with GrapheneOS, I'm going to stay away from putting anything super sensitive on it and largely use it as a communication device. There's some part of me, Steve, that so badly wants to buy into the smartphone. Like all of the other people live with a certain level of convenience, and they're in watching people walk around. There is a level of like, I wish I could do that too. But then I see, even like I had a friend who was going to a concert and they were trying to get, now this isn't GrapheneOS. This is not, we're talking normal stock, just walked into the cell phone, got a phone kind of thing. Right. And both people, an iPhone and Android, both people struggled with the Ticketmaster app to get it to let them view the tickets and do the thing, because and the iPhone is super weird. Is you would enter in, it would say you have to sign in with an iCloud account or whatever, and you would sign in with the account. It would send you the two-factor. You'd put it in, and then it would give you this message that the phone number isn't. It would say like you have to enter in the credit card CID, and it has to be at least 3-digit. Well, it is, and then it would say you have to enter a phone number of 7 digits, which there was, and it would just highlight it in red and wouldn't let you proceed. Couldn't figure that out. And on the Android side, it was a different problem. But the point being that even on the stock thing, they weren't able to use the phone. And so I think as a society in general, I'm very uncomfortable, and increasingly so, of this expectation that we all walk around with these glowing things, and that's our ticket, that's our wallet, that's our everything. I don't like that. I wish to move away from that.
I think that I've distanced myself as much as can be possible given my career choice.
Yeah, that's the other side of it. So help me with this a little bit. So to your point, I have, so let's go back. So let's put my personal Pixel 8a aside and go back to the 6. So I provisioned this on Monday or Sunday, and I've been using it as my work phone. Here's my expectation with this thing. At a bare minimum, it's a device that I can set down in front of somebody. There is no, if you look for the Play Store, you're not going to find it. Technically, there's a Aurora Store, but let's face it, how many people even know what that is? I can set the phone down and when people say, well, you have to download this app or you have to, I don't have that. Here's F-Droid and here's GrapheneOS. I know that you don't know what that is. That is irrelevant. The important part here is I can't do what you're asking me to do. And so when the person at the UPS store, or the person at the ticket gate, or the person at the counter, whatever it is, I'm going to force them to find a different way to let me. And you know what I found? Largely, I found that I'm not the only one doing this. I think right now my friends are the 70, 80-year-old people that legitimately don't have smartphones. But like I went to renew my tabs on my vehicle and have you downloaded the app? No, I have not. What other way can I do this? Well, we have a kiosk over there. You can go do it on there. Excellent. I'll do that. And so right now we're at this spot in society where if you don't want to be married to a glowing smart thing, you can get around it. But I'm afraid, Steve, by the time that you and I hit old age, and certainly by the time our kids get into this, I question, are they going to be able to do this? Are they going to be able to say, yeah, I don't have a smartphone? Or is it going to become a necessity to be a functioning adult? Like you say, you and I are almost kind of there now, just from the standpoint that work is going to tell you, you need to have access to these apps so that you can do X, Y, or Z, and not having one isn't an answer, right? I only use my computer isn't an answer. That's not an answer in 2025. I wonder if it will be an answer in 2045. I kind of doubt it.
Yeah, it's a tough one, especially. So for me, it's the authenticator apps. If they would make an authenticator app on the desktop that I could get at or do it in the browser, that would alleviate the majority of it. Like personally, I use NTAuth, which does have a desktop client, but there's Okta, there's the Microsoft Authenticator, there's like the list is fairly large in terms of what random authenticator a client might choose to use, including RSA, for example. Anyways, point of all that is I can't just say I don't have access to a thing that does that, or else I can't work.
Right.
So, I mean, at some point, yeah, I don't know. I know that we're being salmon and swimming upstream on this one, and sometimes it feels like you're jumping upstream, but if you don't fight for it, it goes away, and no one has the option.
Yeah, I tell you what, if there's, this is where I would tell you you've been an incredibly good influence on me, because I was uncomfortable with this. The moment I unboxed, I remember the moment vividly. The moment I unboxed my first Android phone, it was a Motorola Droid. And I very distinctly remember turning it on for the very first time and getting to a Google account and going, wait, you mean to tell me I can't use this phone? I can't store contacts. I can't do anything until I sign into an online account, and all of that information is going to sync up. And right at that moment, something changed for me. And I'm like, because I'd come from my Palm Pre. My Palm Pre, all the data was just on there. It was just, you could back the whole phone up. I could explore the data through HotSync on my computer. I mean, there was all sorts of cool things to do. And, Linux was right on the KDE and PAM managers and all that was right on the cutting edge. So it was all there for me. And I very distinctly remember the first time I powered on an Android phone and thinking to myself, oh no, this is not my phone. That doesn't feel like my phone. It feels like I'm sending it all to a company. And the first time I feel like I backed away from that was on Monday when my S10 powered off for the last time. I really felt a breath of fresh air. Here are some things I would tell somebody if they were switching to GrapheneOS so that they understand going into this with both eyes open. So a couple of things that I imposed on myself. You wouldn't have to do it this way. In fact, I would tell you that if the first time you're ever switching, you might consider just installing all of the things, Google Play, all the things. That's what I did for my dad, and it made GrapheneOS almost indistinguishable from Android and slowly let him start to introduce the privacy things as he wanted. And so if you've never done any of this before, you might start there. But I'll tell you the process that I went through and where I stubbed my toe in a couple of areas or learned. So the first thing is with my Pixel 6a, I never put a SIM card in this thing. I have set the entire thing up from start to finish on Wi-Fi only, and I don't have a plan to put a SIM card in it at the moment. For a time being, I'm going to drive this thing on Wi-Fi only, and I'm doing that for a couple of reasons. One is I wanted to learn if it's possible. There are certain things I'm learning that services, apps, accounts, whatever, will allow you to do over a mobile network, because if it's tied to a mobile network, it's tied to a phone number. If it's tied to a phone number, they feel like they own you. And so as soon as you break that and you're just a random Android device on the internet somewhere, there are new things that become problematic. The first is the following. There are two ways to use the Aurora Store. One way to use the Aurora Store is you can have it sign into an anonymous account. It's great because you can just pull APKs off of Google Play and nobody knows who you are. It's fantastic. Where that has a glass ceiling is if you want to purchase apps. If you want to purchase apps, you must use a account because there has to be a place where the app is tied to a purchase. That turned out to be a real problem for me because I created a generic Google account, which that in and of itself was a struggle because if you've not signed in from an IP address before, they want you to tie it to a phone number. The way I was able to circumvent that was go to a place that has other people signed into a Google account, go on that device and create a new Google account and it won't ask you for a phone number. Okay, check. Step one, I got a Google account. Now when I tried to sign into the Aurora Store to purchase an app, guess what it says? It won't let you purchase the app directly through the Aurora Store. Okay, I understand that part. The part I don't understand and the part that was exceedingly frustrating to me was when I went back to a computer and tried to purchase an app by signing in with that Google account, it says, you don't have any Android devices. We won't even let you spend your own money on an Android app until you first find a Google device to sign in. Now, the specific app that I was trying to use was Conversations. And in the Google Play Store, it's $6 or whatever. I have since learned that the fine, excellent, wonderful human beings that make the Conversation app, who I want to be clear, I would be more than elated to give you my money because I really appreciate the app that you make. They don't have the ability to, I ran into this problem. What they do is they publish it on F-Droid for free. And so I was able to circumvent the problem. But if I ever need a paid app, I'm going to be right back in this box again. And the only anonymous way I can think to crack this nut is I guess I just wait for an opportunity to go into a Best Buy or a whatever someday when I'm in some city and sign into that account one time on some random device and then sign back out so that I can have the privilege of buying apps. So that was thing one where I stubbed my toe. The second thing I stubbed my toe, which I am still in the process of working out, navigation. So in preparation for my switch to GrapheneOS full time, I started removing apps from my S10 that I didn't absolutely have to have. And one of those was Google Maps. And so I got down to, for the most part, I prefer to navigate with my Garmin. Like Steve, you have the Garmin watch. I have a little navigation unit and I really like it for a couple of reasons. One is I think it does a way better job at more responsive directions to tell me where to go. But the second thing, and the thing that I really couldn't go back without, is I have decades, literally decades of favorite locations in every city all over the world. Favorite chocolate store in Brussels to favorite Indian restaurant in Australia and all these places. And I have those all in that Garmin. And so I like it. And even when I upgraded my Garmin, they give you a very easy way to export all of the coordinates as a CSV file, and you can import them into a new one. All that to say, I love my Garmin. I have no reason to want to change. And I think it does a better job of doing navigation anyway. But occasionally there is a time where either for whatever reason I don't have it available, or more often than not, it's some new thing has happened and I've not yet had a chance to go back and take advantage of Garmin's lifetime map updates to get those maps in there, and I'm in a different city. Whatever the reason is, I need in a moment's notice to be able to pull my phone out and use it for navigation. I tried what worked on the S10, just using Chrome and going to maps.google.com and saying, I want to go here, and click the start, and it did all the things. On GrapheneOS, it will move the little dot so I know it's getting location data. Problem is, I can't get it, no matter how hard I try, to actually read out the instruction set to me. So far as I understand it, I have a couple of options. One option is to install the Google Maps app, which, again, I'm trying to get away from Google, so I'm not real hot on doing that. Up until we got to the pre-show, I was not aware that Google had purchased Waze. In fact, I still don't quite understand why Google continues to maintain Google Maps if they also have Waze. It's weird. Anyway, didn't understand that. I was able to install Waze, and that worked very well. Steve, you have a navigation app that you've been using, and I think you and I use navigation similarly. That is to say, for the most part, we know where we're going. Just every once in a while, we need a helping hand. What have you used, and how have you liked it?
So I use Here We Go as a general rule. Sometimes you have to fall back to a different application because Google Maps set the standard for a reason, I suppose, is the way that we say that. But but generally speaking, for getting from point A to point B, it's fine. For it also knows the speed limits. You have to go in there and tweak it a little bit, because otherwise it pings at you every time that you step like a kilometer over the speed limit, and it's super annoying. Took me a while because I thought it was something. I got into a rental car the first time I discovered this, and I thought it was a rental car. So I pull over and I'm looking through the manual and like I'm doing searches like, how do I turn this off in this stupid car? No, it turned out it was the navigation app. But yeah, I use Here We Go as kind of my go-to. I'm sure there are better ones because I'm a basic phone user. Like, I detest picking this thing up. I went as far as this thing worked for me, and then I stopped my search. So, well, I'm sure there are better ones out there.
I'd be interested in hearing if you have a navigation app, particularly one that is privacy respecting or freedom respecting. I would love to hear about it. On the GrapheneOS forum, they have a couple of recommendations. Here's what I've kind of played around. I fooled around with some of them. I found a very, very wide swath of experiences. Everything from like, I literally just can't even get the thing to work. I don't even know how it does, to it works, but there's not nearly enough detailed map data to do functional navigation. Like, it might be helpful from like a waypoint standpoint. Like, I want to get from this end of town to that end of town, and it kind of generally gets me there. But as far as like a turn by turn thing or navigating streets, or even having like the numbers in there, I found that to be Waze, again, seems to be fine. But again, if they're owned by Google, then am I really accomplishing anything? Maybe I am, because the app isn't necessarily running all the time. I don't know. I'm struggling here. So if you have a suggestion on what really works, I would love to know about that, and I'd love to do that. The second thing that I noticed is notifications are less than. It's not unusable. It's not to the point that I would go away with it. And even after having a fairly in-depth discussion before we got on to do the show, talking about the differences between micro G and Google services and Android, the short version, if I was to sum it up, so far as I understand it, is there are two ways to do notifications. One is Google has a tiny little service called micro G that runs, and micro G will go out and reach out and constantly check for new things. And so when something new comes in, it taps micro G on the shoulder and says, hey, let the user alert know. And because it's running on Google all the time, it's very easy for it to be fast and responsive. Well, if you don't have that, you have to balance between one of two things. Thing one is the notifier is super aggressive and it's constantly checking for updates, and it's going to let you know very quickly when something has come in, but you're balancing battery life, because the more aggressive that thing is, and you're doing it on phone, right? Because you're not relying on Google, yay for privacy, but now we're spending CPU compute cycles and we're spending battery life. And so you have to learn how to balance those things. I would tell you that just moderate tweaking, that is to say, letting some apps be optimized and then setting other ones to say real-time notification, I've got it down now to where it's usable for me. I am very happy. I am elated to make the transition from, I don't need Google to do that. I'll wait a minute or two if that's what it takes for a notification to get in my phone. And if it's really that important, like if something's extraordinarily time sensitive, I am more than happy to just open the app, and then I'm not worried about it. It will show up immediately. It works just as fast as it did on anything else. If you really care about that, if notifications are super, super essential to you and they have to get to you as quickly as possible, again, I'm back to, if you really haven't been in that boat and you wanted to branch off, start by enabling all the stuff and then slowly work your way back. At least with GrapheneOS, I would tell you, you have the ability to do that, and you don't have the ability to do that anywhere else. The last thing I wanted to touch on is browsers, web browsers on phones. It comes with Vandium. It's based on Chrome. The thing that I understand to be true about Chrome or Chrome derivatives is, at the very minimum, Google collects a certain amount of information by way of fonts and rendering and that sort of thing. And so that gets us back to the Vivaldis and Firefoxes of the world. I'm curious what mobile browser you have, and is it a choice of, I believe this is the most privacy conscious, or is it came with Vandium, seems to work, didn't change it, kind of a thing?
So I suppose for me particularly, I always default to Firefox. Okay. So I don't think I've really, that's not true. I use Vandium to log into my work email because I only do that in a browser because whatever. There's policies that I don't want to deal with if I have
Sure.
a client installed. So that is my dedicated login to work email browser, and that's all that I use it for. Otherwise, I go to Firefox.
So I know there's hubbub around this and people have different opinions and you're entitled to them. I would tell you that from a desktop perspective, I have yet to find something privacy invasive that I can't turn off. I know that they collect data by default. I know that they have things with suggested searches. I know that they default to Google. All that can be, you can change all of that. And it's not that hard. They make it real easy. And so I just have a process when I install Firefox on the desktop, I go through and I change a bunch of things. If you want the exact process I use, I follow almost step by step what Kevin Mitnick recommends in his book, Ghost on the Wires. He goes through about how to, why and how you should set the browser to never remember history, not remember cookies, and so I've been doing that for maybe 4 or 5 years now, and I have no complaints. As I set up my work Pixel, I chose to go with Firefox as a mobile browser. I've been very happy with it. It's what I was using on the Galaxy S10, and now after talking to you, Steve, I think that's the route I'm going to go on the 8A as well. The last thing I would leave people with, if you're going down this route, is be prepared for some hiccups and then know where the tools are to fix those hiccups. So things that have been really helpful to me is disabling the app protection thing, so you can turn on where it isn't mitigating exploit stuff. That makes it a little more friendly towards things if you run into apps. Now, again, on my latest go around, I've managed to get away without doing any of this. Or turning on Google Play Services. They make it really easy in their own dedicated app store. You literally just scroll down Google Play Services, tap on it, and then it will install the whole Google suite. So if you've never done it before, I might recommend starting there, but I will tell you, this time around, I tried to take as few steps as I could towards Google. And at the moment, I'm not even signed into a Google account via Aurora Store, anything. I've just made it work. And I'm very happy with it. And so having lived with it, I was 24 hours, 72 hours, somewhere in there, as using it as an absolute full phone, access to absolutely nothing else. And I have zero complaints. So I want to solve the navigation thing, or I want to drill into something that I really, truly believe in. Until then, as long as I know that Google Maps or Waze are going to work, at least I have a way to do it. And I miss nothing. So I don't have enough good things to say about GrapheneOS. I'm deeply, deeply, deeply grateful to the people that make the phone. And the only last plug I would make is this is less applicable to this audience, because if you know what Linux is or you install Linux, I'm telling you, installing GrapheneOS is literally as simple as going to a website, plugging USB cable in, and clicking and following directions and clicking next a bunch of times. I mean, they've got it down that easy. But if that is for some reason outside of your wheelhouse, or what I would tell this audience is, when you go to talk to your friends and family about GrapheneOS, direct them towards the Nitro phone. So the Nitro phone is made by the same people that make the Nitro Key, but all they've done is taken a Google Pixel and flashed GrapheneOS on it, and then they sell it for an upcharge. So if you have the ability and you have the willingness and the knowledge to use the GrapheneOS web installer, and like I say, it's real easy. Just click through the buttons. By all means, go do that for our friends and family. But if you need a quick way, and let's say you want to divorce yourself from the tech support, and they're like, what phone should I buy that's privacy conscious? Go buy a Nitro phone. It gives them a name, it gives them a website, it gives them a place to go, and then somebody else is doing the work for them, and you're supporting what I think to be a really cool open source company that is making things easy and making GrapheneOS approachable to people that otherwise wouldn't know how to buy a Pixel and how to install it and all the rest of it. The last thing is, so I bought all my phones used. I'm a cheapskate that way. I'm not spending $1,000 on a phone I can't change the battery in. It's just a bridge I'm not willing to cross. If you do that, make sure the bootloader is unlockable. Specifically, ones from Verizon seem to be the most problematic. If you can find a factory unlocked, and many sellers will advertise that the network is unlocked, great, awesome. You're looking for the ability to unlock the bootloader. Make sure you get one that you can unlock the bootloader, or make sure you buy one. If you're going to buy it on eBay, make sure you buy it with buyer protection so that you can go return it if you can't unlock the bootloader. Anything else to add to the phone discussion? Are you still happy with GrapheneOS?
I am a basic phone user. So I mean, aside from a couple of bumps some long time ago when I first adopted it, I really haven't noticed the fact that I'm not using any other standard OS on it. I would put a plug out here for Naomi Brockwell TV.
Yes.
So this is a person that I follow. I actually have been archiving her channel with Pinch Flat because she does a lot on privacy, and we'll have a link in the show notes for how to help you block phone tracking. Now, some of them are extreme, but she does series on what's going on with data in your car. She does phones. She does watches. Like, her channel is well worth a watch if you are interested at all in privacy.
Yeah. Talk about this a little bit. How did you come across her? What kind of content did you get from her? And why was it that you got to the point where you're like, I'm archiving her whole channel?
So I don't actually know how I stumbled across her, to be honest with you. I have no idea. But essentially, she talks about things like what is actually happening on your phone. She helps you get to settings that you didn't know about or whatever. She talks about things like Faraday bags. She talks about shortcomings. She talks about the types of horrific things that your car is collecting and just sending away that you don't even know about, and how to like help you deal with that. And let's just say not very advertiser friendly sort of stuff. Like she is non-offensive. It is safe for work. I just mean the topics that she chooses are not one that are going to endear yourself to big corporations. And so because of that, I could see massive demonetization being a problem for her. I could see like there's just a number of things. And so on top of that, I wanted to have a way to spread this knowledge to my kids without having them access to YouTube, right? And so this is also part of the reason for it. But honestly, it's an easy place for me to go and know that I've got these videos, and I actually go back and watch them off of Pinch Flat or wherever, and I just put them in the background, and I really like kind of keeping one ear on it while I'm working on stuff. I find her entertaining and just well worth a watch.
You got me a little curious. I've just kind of accepted that there's nothing I can do about the car other than, not buy newer cars, but that, has a shelf life too. I've just always kind of assumed that you're kind of hosed. What are some of the highlights on how you keep yourself private in a car?
Honestly, it is. There's a reason why I think she's got 3 videos in that series.
Okay.
It's not easy, and there aren't a ton of options, but she does talk about, like, a lot of it is awareness and like, hey, you should know this. So things that are like mind-boggling, like the things that are innocuous, like the microphones in your car actually always being on is so that you can talk to it for like hands-free, like call this person or so on. However, that stuff is being streamed and recorded, and there have been numerous cases of people thinking they had a private conversation because they're sitting in their car, and it turns out that's probably one of the least private places you can sit if you want to have a conversation.
Wow. That's incredible. Here's the thing. I have never really trusted cars. When we bought our Suburban, there's a good friend of mine. I've known him since high school. He's a GM technician, and I bought an older Suburban, and the first thing I asked him was, how do I pull out all the tracking stuff? And so he was able to pull up schematics and all the things. And I'm telling you, Steve, we had to tear that Suburban down to the firewall, the steering wheel, the steering column, everything. I'm not exaggerating, not one word of a lie. We tore the front of that car or this truck down to the firewall to get to all of the modules and things that we had to go rip out to make it so that it would stop sending information to GM and stop communicating. And even then, I got rid of all the telemetrics and all the things that actively track and transmit and do all the things. I can't do diddly squat about all the information that's stored on the devices on the car. If you interrogated the car itself, it collects a certain amount of information, and we couldn't find a way to remove or disable those things without significantly impeding the functionality of the vehicle. So, and that is from a 2013 Suburban. Imagine, that's 10 years old. Imagine what it's like today. I think this problem is going to get worse, not better. My only saving grace is there's all these new like little electric vehicles, like these little tiny things that are really meant more for like off-roading but they've gotten to the point now where they've got 4 doors, they've got a car stereo, they have heating, they have air conditioning. I mean, it is a little mini car, and those seem to be largely devoid of tracking and all this fancy technology stuff because they're cheap. Now, they're not going to have any of the crash stuff and the safety stuff, and there's a whole bunch of other problems that you introduce, but for bombing around town might be an option. But the whole privacy thing inside of vehicles, technology that you didn't ask for, didn't want, and didn't consent to, that problem is going to get worse, not better. And you'll notice any car made in the last few years has a little yellow sticker on it, and it says, the manufacturer of this vehicle is collecting data, is collecting telemetrics by you driving this vehicle and by, using the things. You consent to all of this. It's not good. It's not good at all. I don't like it. But it's the world we live in. Our third email comes in from Dan. Dan says, to the comprehensive Steve and Noah, time-appropriate greetings from Northern Idaho. Thanks so much for answering my server question completely. I'm off to the races with that information. In the same episode, if I recall correctly, you asked us to post our Linux wins, so here are mine. Very long-term win. I was first introduced to Linux and open source by Kay at Combat Studies in 2011. He teaches an extensive course called Ground Rod, and it focuses on Linux and open source defense for the individual. I've since attended several of these classes, and they're all up to date with the best practice and an amazing fieldcraft. Highly recommend the courses. And then he links to www.combatstudiesgroup.blogspot.com. Secondly, in Northern Idaho, there is a PC drop station at Northern Lakes Bible, soon to be one at my work. You mentioned that you were flashing old boxes with Endless and leaving them on the shelf for anyone that needed one. I used to do that in Oregon for homeschool families. You reminded me there's always a need for an available and affordable tech. Thanks for being the example. God bless and keep you both. Dan. Well, that's nice. By the way, those Endless laptops that I was talking about, one more went out the door. Like I was unloading them up, and people are using them for just all sorts of small group stuff, study stuff, whatever. They hired a new maintenance guy, and I gave him a computer with Endless, and he used it for like a day. You would have gotten a kick out of the Steve. And he's like, I hate this. This sucks. I'm like, well, what's wrong with it? And he's like, doesn't look like Windows. I'm like, Windows. Got it. I'm replicating Mac. Let me replicate Windows. To Linux Mint I went with Cinnamon, happy as a clam. He's happy as a clam. And I even found an icon pack that changes the icon down at the bottom of Linux Mint to the Windows icon, Steve, and Windows theming and the whole 9 yards.
I'm still loving Cinnamon over here.
Yeah, 100%. All right, we'll head over to the Linux newsroom, get the latest from JT, and close us out.
From the Linux Newswire newsroom, this is the Week in Review with JT.
For the week of March 30th, 2025, here's the Linux and open source news. XZUtils 5.8 is now available. Shotcut 25.03 is out. Google has announced that it will make Android development private, but will continue to open source releases. In distro news, Chaos 2025.03 has been released. Zorin 17.3 is now available. Linux Lite 7.4 is out. Q4OS 5.8 Aquarius has been released. And the EU has started a new initiative called EU OS to develop a Linux-based OS tailored for public sector organizations in Europe. And lastly, in open source AI news, the CEO of OpenAI, Sam Altman, has claimed that OpenAI will release an open weight model this summer.
If you're hearing us, the music in my ears means we're out of time. I thank you for joining us. We record the show every Tuesday live at 6 p.m. Central. Join us at AskNoahShow.com. Also visit podcast.AskNoahShow.com. What will you find there? Well, you find all the show notes as well as a back catalog of all the episodes. We're on X. He's at Linux Ovens. I'm at Kernel Linux. The show at Ask Noah Show. And give me a follow on Mastodon at Kernel Linux at Kernel Linux at linuxrocks.online. We're back next Tuesday, 6 p.m. Central. AskNoahShow.com.